So for Dune Chapter 3, the plot's starting to thicken. We're moving away from the point of view of Vladimir Harkonnen and then jumping back to Paul Atreides, his mother Jessica, and the Reverend Mother. So Paul's hanging out behind closed doors while Jessica's chatting with the Reverend Mother, kind of having a debrief on this whole gom jabber thing that Paul went through and how he passed the test. We find out that Jessica had been wanting to bear Duke Leto. She's a concubine for this guy, basically, a son. And the Reverend Mother just keeps scolding her, like, why were you doing this? Why were you doing this? If you had produced a daughter, I'm not exactly sure how these Bene Gesserit can kind of like decide. But anyway, if Jessica had produced a daughter, then that daughter could have married into the Harkonnen family and there'd just be peace and happiness all over the place. It would have like unified those two warring houses. But anyway, Jessica kind of explains her point of view, and the Reverend Mother's still a little bit annoyed. And in the whole process, we also get a little bit more world building going on. We learn that the Emperor, who is the house that oversees the Imperium, which is basically like similar to the Galactic Empire in Star Wars, him and his team own 59.65 of this CHOAM company, which is the one that mines spice on Arrakis. So that's how they have power. They just basically have the most stock in the big company. And then they're part of what the Reverend Mother calls like a tripod of power, and it's balanced between this Imperium household and the great houses of Landstrat. I'm not exactly sure what that is. And then some guild that holds monopoly on interstellar space travel. So this balance of power between these three organizations is really critical to making sure the whole society functions. And Reverend Mother and the Bene Gesserit seem pretty bent on making sure these things remain stable. And again, that's why she's annoyed that Jessica went and somehow had the son, Paul. That being said, the Reverend Mother still seems to have a pretty keen interest in Paul because, again, he passed this test that he wasn't supposed to pass. So he's human, and he might actually be this Quetzalcoatl Haderach fellow or person. So she calls Paul back into the room. The Reverend Mother, that is, calls him back into the room. And she picks his brain a little bit because apparently Paul's been having these dreams. So she says, hey, what are these dreams you're having? She says it more mean than that, I'm guessing. And he tells her that he's seeing a cavern, and in this cavern he's sitting with a girl who has blue eyes. Obviously that means she's been munching on some spice or hanging out around spice. And the girl's nervous because they're about to meet some big group of people, but Paul's feeling pretty excited. So this really intrigues the Reverend Mother. I don't entirely know why, but ultimately she kind of hints a little bit more that Paul might actually be pretty significant. And then she leaves the room, and she's got a couple tears falling down her face. So it feels like Frank Herbert's hinting that the Reverend Mother's conflicted about this whole thing with Paul. So I'm kind of curious, like a little bit more about the Reverend Mother's whole view on this thing. It seems like a pretty interesting plot line. And I'm guessing in Chapter 4, we'll eventually start moving over to Arrakis or Dune, but we shall see. If you'd like to watch what happens in Chapter 4, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to keep up with these videos. Try to make one every day or a couple of days. And yeah, looking forward to the next one. Take care. Bye.